What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Depeche Mode, and we're actually going back to one of their early albums. I didn't realize there were any tunes remaining on my version of Some Great Reward, 1984, that I hadn't reacted to, but in fact there is. But in terms of what I've come to learn about their albums, there seems to be not only different versions of the albums, depending on whether it's the UK or the American version, at least in a couple cases, but there's a number of tunes that are included as bonus tracks in the materials I've had made available to me, which again, I appreciate the patience, but we will get through everything, even the rest of Exciter, despite some people not liking such albums. In any case, I tease surely, but we are going to listen to If You Want, which is a track, again, I thought I had reacted to this full album, but because of the way I jumped around, there seems to be at least one or two exceptions on almost all of the albums. I think Speak and Spell, at least the version I have, I've reacted to everything. So, in any case, If You Want, what I remember about it is, number one, sonically, it has that energetic but dark and a bit mysterious feel of a lot of their tunes during this period and, you know, leading into Black Celebration. And then lyrically, I remember being amused when I began to pay attention to such things, because I remember thinking like, okay, so he's saying like, on the weekend you can go with me to a party, and you know, maybe you don't want to go, but we can go there and, you know, we can explore that world. But then it's talking about like we could be at a building site and we can build something, which, okay, that could be figurative, and, you know, maybe building a relationship based on going to dance clubs or whatever. But then at the end it goes back to that, like, you know, you could go with me or you could not go with me, which it feels like those are the two options. And then it's like, but you may not want to. So then it's like, it sounds like there's maybe an attempt to compel, an attempt to entice, even though the other person has some misgivings, they feel a bit uncomfortable. So there's a suggestion of, you know, maybe in the dark sonics are indicative of that. You know, someone going to an event or a type of place where maybe they feel a bit like a fish out of water, or feel like it's a bit seedy, or you know, a bit questionable. So I've never quite known what to make of this one, but it sounds like on some level it's about parties on the weekend that serve as some sort of yes, distinction, or a different type of experience relative to what they're doing during the week, and maybe again they can build on that at a building site or something. So who knows what I'm talking about, who knows what the song's about. Let's listen to it. This is Depeche Mode. The track is If You Want, and it's the 1984 album Some Great Reward. I didn't remember it had this long, intensely ambient intro.
You want
just in the bass. It's a bit computer virus as well. That like growl, make it master and servant, that makes an appearance, right? Yeah, it's in one way very nostalgic. I mean, this is when I was like, first obsessed with them and listening to a lot of their tapes, and I definitely remember having this one. So, like I said, it's only a product of me jumping around so much when I began doing Depeche reactions, which is, I wasn't so coordinated and meticulous with the deep dives, which in part is just a product of people helping me go through the catalogs of groups that I'm not familiar with. Whereas, when I started, it was like idiosyncratically I was going through my techno collection. Let me react to this record. Oh, this one's good too. I'll react to that. And eventually I started reacting to some of the punk rock you see behind you. And then Depeche, I think, was maybe the first. I think it was actually an Erasure reaction. I think I have an Erasure 12-inch of Oh L'Amour, and there's like a remix of it. I think that was the very first synth-pop reaction, if I remember correctly. And pretty early on, I started going through Duran's Rio because I pulled that one out too. But Depeche Mode was definitely early on, and then certainly Andy Fletcher dying made me start doing more Depeche Mode reactions, because I was sort of like, man, that's, feels like such a monumental thing. So I figured, I need to pay tribute, and I think I did a couple that day and a number over the next couple months. But again, at the time it was like, well, I want to do this one because I love that tune. Oh, and this one on that album, I got to do that. So I thought I had gone through all the Some Great Reward. Turns out that was not the case. I think now that is the last one. I will check, because you can keyword search in YouTube Studio, but I'm pretty sure that's all of them now, at least on my version. Again, there are sometimes discrepancies. In any case, it's more wicked than I remembered. The ambient intro was longer than I remembered, and again, I love how darkly, dissonantly, and intensely ambient that intro is. I love not only the synth bass overall, but especially when it sort of shifts into a heavier, darker mode, like halfway through the overall measure. And yeah, ultimately, it's just, there's a meta comedy to like building a building site, right? Like, I mean, I get it. You're gonna build some big construction work. You have to set up like a building platform, a place where you can store all the vehicles. You have to like set that up. So there's a real world legitimacy to it, but it's also like funny to talk about like building something that you're then going to use to build things. So building a building site is very funny to me, but again, I don't know like how metaphorically that might be relevant. I will say though, the notion that he's sort of pulling this other person, maybe, not just them being uncomfortable, but feeling genuinely like they maybe shouldn't be there, but he's bringing them along instead. It felt stronger than I remembered it. So it does feel like there's some compulsion or an asymmetrical power dynamic in the relationship, which, that definitely would not be outside the typical range of Depeche Mode lyrics. So, and once again, I think by this point you can definitely feel the darkness of Alan Wilder's contributions to their productions, which is something that over the years, like, I knew he was a member of the group, you know, once they did the first couple albums, and then, you know, up to the late 90s. I don't remember exactly when he left in this moment of speaking about it, but I was aware he was there, but it wasn't until I started doing these reactions and hearing from people, you know, oh, listened, you know, this production and listened on this album, and then, you know, learning, you know, the way that Vince did productions, you know, relative to then Martin, you know, taking over the sort of the lead, but then Alan becoming in a way like the lead music guy, which I know that like quote from Andy like is pretty famous. So like Alan's the music guy, you know, Martin's the writer, Dave's the voice, and I just putz around or whatever he said. But ultimately, you know, I do understand now more, much to a much greater degree, Alan Wilder's effect on their sound and the darkness for which, you know, their perhaps most celebrated period is famous for. You know, they're like dark periods. So big shout out to Alan Wilder and all the people who've been following me, including Nina. Whenever I think of Alan Wilder, I do think of Nina, so shout out to you. And yeah, I will continue to go through the albums, not just seeing any tracks on my copies of the studio albums that we haven't gone through, but again, Han Solo and others, including Adam, also have folders with like extra tracks, and you know, certainly not all of those I've reacted to, so we'll get to everything eventually. I do appreciate those who are still here for the occasional Depeche Mode reaction. I don't mean them to go so long, but as with Duran, and even Aha to a lesser extent, because there's still some Aha, like, you know, album or compilation material that I'm going through, but you know, when I get through a group's like studio albums, for the most part, again with Depeche Mode, you know, there are fewer things to go through, so inevitably they're not as frequent as they used to be. But the fact that there's still people here when I do reactions in these various deep dives, like Depeche, like Duran, it does mean a lot. So shout out to you. Let me know what you think of this. I will stop talking at this point. But yeah, this tune is better than I remembered it. I wonder whether you think the same. I will see you next time. Peace.